Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. And I am looking forward to this show. I have in the last few months, but now, as Tommy Lasorda once said, because God delays does not mean that God denies. And my goodness, I am
Mhm.
pleased to be joined by Mark Perry of the XFL. I'm sorry, UFL News. I'm getting caught up with these leagues. I'm so
Well, I
sorry,
know.
man.
Hey, we've got. I so the whole this process started right.
Right.
I had a football. I had a wrestling site called Pro Wrestling News Hub. Then
Right.
Vince McMahon announced that he was going to bring back the XFL. So I started XFL News Hub. Then XFL went under, and then The Rock bought it. And
Right.
then there was rumblings about them merging with the CFL. So I bought CFL News Hub.
Wait a
And
second.
then Fox came in and said, hey, we want to start the USFL. So there's USFL News Hub. Then that went on for a year or two. And then they merged. And now we have UFL News Hub. So it is 100% accurate that you would mess that up because, in fact, all those domains I have gone through this whole since 2018 dealing with the spring football.
Do you own them?
I own them all.
I like you already because I own a bunch of domains too. I
I mean,
call it
full site.
domain real estate, man.
But I mean, it's full sites. I mean, we had guys reporting. I mean, Mike Mitchell and, some legends in the sports spring football, have reported on all of these sites. And then, it was like, do you want to merge to a new one? And I'm like, no, just start fresh, start a new name. So this was year two of UFL News Hub. But actually, this is like gosh, I mean, if it's 2025, 2018, you're talking 7 years of following spring football.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about my days back in the spring football. Before I do that, why don't you let everybody know a little bit about you? Introduce yourself and what your role is with UFL News Hub because I'm going to get it right and I'm going to discipline myself to make sure I do it because I don't want to look like something that's going to happen in a few weeks. I don't want to be a March Fool, even though April Fool's is coming up.
Yeah. So I'm Mark Perry. I'm a software engineer by day and an entrepreneur at night. I've had websites since I was graduated college. I'm in my 50s now. I just turned 50 this year. And, I always had a pro wrestling site for a long time and sold it. My claim to fame in the pro wrestling world is Impact Wrestling got their domain name from me. My website was called Impact Wrestling and I sold it to TNA Wrestling. If you guys know anything about pro wrestling or any fans out there, if the history of wrestling, that's my foray. But, like I said before, when Vince McMahon announced the XFL, I was like, well, this will be fun. I was kind of getting bored of wrestling and I'm like, oh, just I like football. And then just kind of started the site when they didn't even have Oliver Luck. There was nobody there. It was just an idea and wrote about the cheerleaders and the blimp that crashed and, just kind of the history of the original XFL. And then the rest has been history.
You ever heard of a guy named Steve Reichel?
Mm-mm.
You will, because this guy's a real big combat sports guy. And when I asked you before we went on air if you want to come on inside the pigskin, he's one of them. And this guy is as big a pro wrestling guy as you're going to get. He really
Gotcha.
is, especially in this day and age. He really is. So stay tuned. And I'm looking forward to bringing you on that show. It'll be a much different format when I have a bunch of guys asking questions instead of what we're going to do tonight. We're going to cover the league like a blanket for sure. Brian
Mm.
Pettit, welcome. Thanks for being on tonight. So glad that you're able to introduce. I'm glad you're able to come on the show tonight. And obviously, for a lot of you folks that don't know it, the United Football League will be starting, I believe, next weekend. I did an interview with Daryl Moose Johnson over at the Super Bowl 59. It was incredible. I'm going to send it over to you, and then you can take whatever you want out of it, whatever you have to do to write content. But it'll be
Absolutely.
something because you were nice enough to kindly subscribe to our channel. Anything I can do to collaborate with you going forward, now that we have this show and the fact we've been in contact, I'm definitely open to any collaboration that you need and I'm here anytime you need me. That's what I find that when you have people that are really nice to you and so forth, then it's important. And I want to also point out though, the UFL News Hub is on the South Florida Tribune front page. So we actually have a plugin that allows you to get news over on our website. I view that Mark as a media distribution partner of a different sort because when you go to our website, you click their link, you go directly to their site and we've been collaborating for a while. And I'm just glad that a lot of our football fans that don't have the appetite, that aren't able to get the NFL now, other than the draft, can at least be able to look at you guys and get a lot of updates. And we're going to have those throughout the show. So just want to set the table for what we're going to talk about tonight, Mark. So
Mhm.
with that said, let's get into this. We're going to talk about each team's UFL projected starting quarterback, and I'm going to ask you who has the best. We're going to start off with Max Dugan, TSU. I'm sorry, TCU,
Mhm.
and he's with the Seattle St. Louis Battlehawks.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about him?
I think it's going to be Manny Wilkins. So the thing is, AJ McCarron wanted to come back. Um, the Battlehawks pretty much said, we're not interested, which is really surprising because he was, let's just say, he was the biggest star in spring football.
Right.
But he was also getting on years and was a little bit injured last year. But he came in and tried to lead the Battlehawks to the championship game, couldn't do it. And so really early on during the offseason, they moved on. And so clearly they knew they had somebody they felt that would play better than AJ McCarron, and that's Manny Wilkins. So I think he is going to be the guy to kind of get things rolling for the St. Louis Battlehawks going into the season. But
Um,
Max Dugan is a guy that people are very excited about seeing. And a lot of these teams, one of the articles that one of our guys, Pat Ruffino, did, he's a big time quarterbacks kind of writer, writes a lot of stuff about quarterbacks. And he mentioned in his article about how a lot of times these, I'm trying to find it, that, a lot of these teams will go, it's not just going to be one quarterback all season long. Now, the DC Defenders will have their quarterback, basically all season long, and, barring injury, and the Arlington Renegades. But a lot of these teams will kind of flip flop quarterbacks all season long. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Max out there on the field at some point this season.
Sounds good. Kellen Mond, Texas A&M with San Antonio Brahmas.
I think he's going to be the guy. He doesn't have spring football experience, but he's definitely somebody that another big name. He's a local guy, so that in itself is going to get people are excited about him. Um, Also in that quarterback room, you've got Kevin Hogan and Jarrett Guantanamo. Guantanamo has been around for a while, but I think Kellen Mond is the guy for the Brahmas. And the Brahmas, same thing. They got rid of all their quarterbacks from last year and have a
Mhm.
whole new. I mean, these other guys have played a little bit, but Chase Garbers was their guy, and he was lighting it up. And then apparently they didn't want him back, or he didn't want to come back, and so now the rookie Kellen Mond gets the nod there.
Yeah, Texas A&M. Anthony Brown played his college ball at Oregon, as I have it listed. Houston Roughnecks. What do you think about Anthony?
I think seems to be the guy. And now the Roughnecks are probably going to be they're projected in the odds makers to be at the bottom of the barrel again. But I have heard good things about Anthony Brown. Jalen McClendon was with the DC Defenders. He played well when he was with the Vegas Vipers. So he might get a shot there. But Anthony Brown seems to be the guy that people are excited about, at least in practice footage. When it comes to game time, which we talked to CJ Johnson, the head coach, this afternoon after practice, that they'll have a decision Friday or Saturday on who the starting quarterback is going to be.
Sounds good. Jordan Tay,
Teamu.
Tiamu. I was
Yeah,
trying. I'm doing the best I can with some of
that's
these
okay.
pronunciations. Known for being at Ole Miss. Obviously, you mentioned the DC Defenders. Your thoughts about Jordan?
Yeah, he's one of the basically between him and Luis Perez are the top names. And now that AJ McCarron's gone, led the DC Defenders in the XFL to the championship game. I was there. Unfortunately, lost.
Right.
Last year, they didn't play as well. They lost Abram Smith, their running back. But I think this year, Tom was back. It really took the DC. I'm a season ticket holder, and I always say DC Defenders are America's team because they're in Washington,
Good.
D.C. That only makes logical sense
Okay.
being in Washington, D.C. So if you don't have a team, your team is automatically DC Defenders. I just want to point that out to anybody
All
out
right.
there that
No
looking for
problem.
a team. And they're always good. I mean, Audi Field is fantastic. Like I said,
Yeah.
season ticket holder, the Beer Snake. So Tayamu is our guy, and he should have a better season this year. Now that he's got a lot of some of his weapons back, a lot of the guys last year made it to NFL rosters and stayed on NFL rosters, so they
Right.
never came back.
Well, you alluded to Luis Perez. Obviously, he's with the Renegades, Arlington Renegades, and he has bounced around on the NFL practice squad. So, Mark, please elaborate on Luis, the journeyman, as we like to call it.
Well, Luis Perez is the key. He's coming out with a book called "The King of Spring," and that's his nickname
Really?
within our circle because he led the Arlington Renegades to a championship game. And again, I was there. The DC Defenders lost. I mean, he led the league in passing. He's always up there in stats, and he's always kind of a guy that they're always like, "Well, no, like we'll put him on the bench and we'll put somebody else." And he did that. He was on the Vegas Vipers and was on the bench. And then they traded him to the Renegades after an injury. And then he took over and led them to the championship and they won. And then last year, he's despite their team being, middle of the pack, he was lighting things up. So Luis Perez is the king of spring, as he says, and I expect him to have another good season this year.
I wrote that down, by the way. King of Spring. I like
Yeah.
it. It's good. Matt Corral, Ole Miss, Birmingham Stallions.
Alex Magoo is returning. He led them to the championship in the USFL. Last year, he was a wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. They brought him in as a quarterback, played wide receiver. I think he was even playing tight end a little bit. The Packers let him go, and now he's back in the UFL. So he will be the guy. He was a top player in the USFL, and I think he's going right back to where he was comfortable with. So Matt Corral, they have Case Cookus too, a guy that's played well in spring leagues. He was with the USFL and he was with the UFL last year. They have Birmingham is a stacked team. They're already picked to win the championship again this year. They're stacked at quarterback. There is some changeover. They lost their general manager. He went into the college ranks, a young guy. He was only 23 years old, their general manager, and built a 3-time champion Stallions. So Alex
Okay.
Magoo is the guy again, and he will be another top name in the league. And the Stallions don't look like they'll be stopping. Like they're still going to dominate this year.
Don't worry, we're going to get to the coaches shortly. Bryce Perkins, Virginia, will be playing for the Michigan Panthers.
Michigan Panthers. So yeah, I think Bryce Perkins, Danny Outling is a guy. I think Danny will be the top guy. I think it's kind of between those two guys. They had some good quarterback play last year, and they traded their guy to where did they trade him to? EJ Perry. They traded him to the Memphis Showboats, so he was their guy last year. So Michigan Panthers, they were a good team, kind of a surprise team last year. I think Outling gets the nod over Bryce Perkins
Okay.
this season.
Okay. Well, you just said it. EJ Perry with the Memphis Showboats out of Brown, by the way.
Yeah,
He can know he's pretty intelligent, isn't he, coming from there?
yeah. He was great for the Michigan Panthers last year. Surprised that they traded him. They have Troy Williams also he was okay, but the Pittsburgh Maulers of the USFL, and they made it all the way to the USFL championship. But I think EJ Perry is the guy. Memphis Showboats, completely new coaching staff,
Right.
and built from the ground up. They were probably the least popular franchise, but now with new head coach and maybe EJ Perry at quarterback stabilize things and they'll be ready to go.
All right. So we talked about all these quarterbacks. So you mentioned them. Now I'm going to give you a summary question. What QB stands out in this group?
I think Alex Magoo coming back, playing for the
Okay.
Birmingham Stallions. If you're a fantasy player, I mean, I know people will be attracted to the King of Spring, Luis Perez. I would probably go with Alex Magoo as your preseason MVP. Typically, if you're the quarterback of the Birmingham Stallions over the last several seasons between the USFL and UFL, I mean, pretty much you're going to be an MVP candidate.
Now let's go on to the coaches. I always like talking about coaches because the one thing about the UFL has a lot of great coaches that very few people
Yeah.
realize. The one guy who I actually will say though, and I'm going to do a little name dropping here, is Tom Herman, who I work with at FAU. I hope he lands a job somewhere, whether it's in the UFL or somewhere. He's a really good offensive mind. It was a tough situation that Tom Herman, just Mark, had at FAU with an NIL, excuse me, and a mid major. So if his name ever gets thrown around out there, I'm just putting it out there. Tom Herman, formerly of FAU, Ohio State, and Texas. Just an FYI. I'm not trying to get
Uh-huh.
the guy hired. I'm not a recruiter. I'm just
Uh-huh.
putting it out there. And you
Uh-huh.
certainly don't have a shortage of teams in Texas either. All
Yes.
right. Speaking of UFL head coaches, Bob Stoops. What a name to have for
Yes.
Arlington.
So when I had XFL News Hub, and Oliver Luck got hired, and I kind of was paying attention, and I wasn't. And then really, what kind of changed the trajectory of the XFL under Vince McMahon was hiring Bob Stoops. That was a big,
Right.
huge get, and they paid him, over $1 million, or at least, or if not more, to coach in the XFL. And he always said it. He just enjoys it. And I was surprised. I wouldn't have been surprised if he didn't come back this year. I mean, he did win a championship. They were a under 500 team that won the XFL championship. Last year, they were kind of middle of the pack. And I was like, well, he might just be done with it. But I think he's enjoying it. And I think they're paying him well. And he's a big name coach. And so, you kind of need those names to get people excited about. And he's certainly a big name.
The guy has a tremendous amount of credibility. All he did was win national championship Oklahoma Sooner. How can he
Yeah.
not enjoy a spring game? Think about it. Okay.
I mean,
Really? Serious? Really? What do you play? What, 10, 12 games all year?
yeah, I mean, you think about it, it's only 3 or 4 months of work. And that's what he said he liked about it. And he didn't have to deal with the students. These are all players that are hungry, that you want to make it to the NFL. So you don't have to deal with, and if they're trouble, you don't have to call their parents. You just cut them. And then there's 20 other guys that are willing to just jump on your roster.
That's true. Get rid of them, let the general manager deal with it and do something you like to do. Called
Yeah.
coaching. Never heard of it.
Yeah.
Not a bad gig, and you don't have to deal with all the extracurricular stuff.
Yeah.
We talked about Birmingham Stallions. Skip Holtz struggled at University of South Florida, but hasn't struggled anywhere else. And now the guy's a legend. I'm surprised he doesn't get a statue in Birmingham, although he probably will before it's all said and done. But Skip Holtz, what an incredible job. What, he's won three titles in a row, three-peat in a different sense? What are your
Yep.
thoughts about Skip being back?
I'm glad he's back. There was some rumblings that maybe he might have gotten a college job. It's unfortunate because, Birmingham is the pinnacle franchise when the USFL returned. That was their hub. And the
Right.
fans have just not shown out. I mean, you have a 3-time champion team. You've got top players that go to the NFL at quarterback. You got Skip Holtz, who's a great human being, markets the team well. He's a likable guy, but they just can't generate the interest on that team for some reason. Maybe it'll change this year, but I mean, you'd hate to lose a guy like Skip Holtz too. I mean, if he wins 4, I mean, that's spring. I mean, he's already a spring. If there was a Hall of Fame for spring football, it would be very short. The window is small, but I mean, he certainly would be in a Hall of Fame as a coach, 3-time champion.
Hi, Mickey Zolini. Glad to have you in there. Brian Pettit says, I like the name Arlington Renegades in the logo. Great
Yeah.
stuff. Well, there you go. All right. Well, now you ought to feel comfortable with this because you're already seeking an America's team in that league. DC Defenders, Reggie Barlow. What are your thoughts about Reg?
So he's one that kind of no one knew about, but he was an HBCU coach, Virginia
Right.
State, I believe. And, the XFL wanted to bring in, not only name brand guys like
Right.
Bob Stoops, Wade Phillips, but they tried Rod Woodson, they tried Hines Ward, and he was kind of a name that people were like, huh? Who is this guy? But I mean, he's been great. He's a great ambassador to the team. I've met him multiple times. Great guy. And we're rooting for him. I mean, he's got Greg Williams. Everybody remembers Greg Williams from NFL defensive coordinator days. Bounty Gate, I think he was kind of unfortunate, but I mean, a
I didn't say
fantastic.
you did, but okay.
um, And so he's the defensive coordinator, and I think they got a great general manager and Vaughn Hutchins. So I think they've got a stacked coaching staff too, and some young up and coming guys as well. So he's a great coach too. We were worried about maybe he was going to be going on too, but he's still there.
Okay. Houston Roughnecks got Curtis Johnson. Please tell me more about him.
He is the one guy that I think some people are like, this could be his last year. Great guy, great coach, good coach, but the team was not good last year at all. And this season, they weren't good when he was the coach in the UFL. Then he switched, from the USFL. Then from the UFL, still the team was still not good. I think they brought in a new general manager, giving him new quarterbacks. Really trying to to get things going for him. We'll see that. I mean, if they don't turn it around this season, this could be his final season in the UFL. There's a lot of big time coaches that want to come into the league. He was another kind of like, people were not a household name like a Bob Stoops or Wade Phillips that came in, but he's on a short leash this season. I think if they can't turn it around, I think they might move on.
Right. You alluded to this earlier. Now I'm going to get to it. The one hire I'm really intrigued and happy about, actually, is Ken Wisenhunt going to the Memphis Showboats. I really like him. He was a proven NFL coach, and to see him get an opportunity in this league, because let's face the reality, the UFL does not have any shortage of credible names in this league. You're not
Yeah.
talking about guys you haven't heard of. Ken Wisenhunt, to me, is one of the most credible people you can have, and Memphis should be thankful to have him. What do you think? Two-part question. One, what are you looking for out of Ken Wisenhunt? What type of year do you think that the Showboats are going to have?
So the odds makers has them at the bottom of the barrel, the second to worst, the Houston Roughnecks. But
Okay.
I think Ken Wisenhunt, we can talk about the head coach, Mike Nolan, for the Michigan Panthers. He turned things
Right.
around. Wade Phillips, when he went to the San Antonio Brahmas, he turned them around. I think Ken Wisenhunt is one of the top coaches in the league. To have them that low, and I think they put him in the right spot. That Memphis franchise needs help. That's why I think, having a name like him, we'll see if the fan turnout goes. But that was to me, when we heard that name, that he was coming in. We replaced John DiFilippo, which is again another guy that was kind of like, who's this guy?
Right.
Had a nice career in college and stuff, gave him an opportunity for Pro Bowl. But yeah, I mean, and Wisenhunt wanted in. Apparently, he called up Moose Johnson and was like, "I want in."
Right.
And Moose said that there was multiple big name coaches that wanted to come in to play spring. I mean, what a great gig! Maybe you get paid $1 million, maybe you get paid 500,000, whatever it is. Coach for 4 months, and then you just have the rest of the year off.
Right.
You can
So
scratch the
you
itch, and you can play golf.
right. So you like actually what Ken Wisenhunt could bring to the table. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think they're my dark horse as a team that everybody's picking. Now, last year, Michigan Panthers were picked. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The San Antonio Brahmas were picked to be the seventh worst, team in the league, and they made it to the finals, and they lost to the Birmingham Stallions. I think Memphis Showboats could be the same thing. Geraldine Horton was a defensive coordinator in the USFL, and with the Pittsburgh Maulers, and they made it to the championship. So Ken Wisenhunt on offense and Horton on defense.
Right.
I mean, I think they could turn it around real quick.
Well, you alluded to these guys. Now we're going to get to them. Michigan Panthers, Mike Nolan. We all know his dad, Dick Nolan, was a good coach in the NFL. But what do you like about the job that Mike Nolan has done?
I mean, Michigan Panthers were right in there. I wanted him to wear the suit. That was the thing. He needed to wear the suit, and he didn't wear suits. He should have rocked a suit. But
Yeah.
I mean, that was another great coach to come in there. And Michigan, again, last year they weren't really thought of as going to be a good franchise,
Right.
and they made it to the championship. The USFL conference championship game,
Right.
and Jake Bates, people know him. Went on to
Right.
the Detroit Lions,
Right.
and they had a good team, so they should be good this year too. Another great coach.
Wait till I get into my history with spring football. This will blow you away. That's why you were obviously a great choice to bring on this show because I have a history with spring football. Most of a lot of younger people they don't know much about it until became an idea where it started to make sense. You didn't have a feeder system, obviously to the NFL. This is a great place to go. San Antonio Brahmas. You talk about Wade Phillips. I don't know about Bump Phillips. But Wade's done a pretty good job. He seems to be acclimating to spring football as well, doesn't he?
Oh, he's always been a great coach in spring football. And AJ Smith is his offensive coordinator, and they play the it's not the run and shoot. It's the the name is going to escape me. Um,
Spread offense.
no, they play oh gosh, and I can't I forget his name. Air raid offense, the air raid offense.
Okay.
And they light it up, and they got great receivers. John Trey Kirkland came over when Wade Phillips was with the Houston Roughnecks. And it's funny because originally they didn't have a spot for Wade. And at the last minute, Hines Ward said he didn't want back in the UFL. And so he dropped out, and then they were like, Wade, do you want to come back? Because originally when they merged everything, Wade was out. But then Hines Ward decided not to, and then Wade Phillips came in, brought his staff, and made it to the championship game. So they'll be good, and they're a lot of fun to watch. Good defensive team, good offense, high-powered offense. So they've got a nice combination there. And again, another great guy. Everybody likes playing with him, playing for him, and he's enjoying himself. So.
Well, we talk about the air raid offense. The guy that stands out to me is Mike Leach. He's the one who really blew it up wherever he went offensively. So if you're going to have an offense in a league such as this, where you're trying to develop quarterback lineouts, I don't think there's any offense that you can employ that would be pretty good. Last question I want to get to St. Louis Battlehawks and Anthony Beck. What do you know about him?
Well, I mean, it's funny because I grew up on Long Island, so I was a Jets fan. Transplant here to Maryland, and I was a Ravens season ticket holder, so my allegiance is with the Baltimore Ravens now. But I remember him back in, as tight end with the Jets. Another great guy, good ambassador to the league. He really wanted the St. Louis Battlehawk franchise when he really pushed to get that opportunity to coach in the USF, in the UFL, XFL, and the USFL. Now, Bruce Gradkowski was his offensive coordinator, and people remember him from the NFL days. He has now moved on to Detroit. So the question is, and now they lost AJ McCarron, they lost Bruce Gradkowski. How is he? Was it those two guys is what made the ship run in St. Louis, or is it Anthony Beck at the helm? So having him. It's going to be an interesting season. And really, the UFL, in order for it to survive, St. Louis needs to be a strong franchise.
Boy, you're a great segue, man. You really are. So that's going to lead me to my next question. Could you see St. Louis ever getting another NFL team?
So it's funny because the St. Louis fandom is born out of hatred of Stan Kroenke. And so really, it's the anger is what fuels them. Now in DC, the DC Defenders always drew well because of the anger towards Dan Snyder.
Wow. Okay.
And when you would be at a DC Defenders game, and even last year with the new regime for the Commanders, there was always chance of F Dan Snyder, just random. Be in the middle of a third quarter and a timeout, and the stadium will chant F Dan Snyder. But now that the Commanders are good last year, I wonder how that's going to affect DC. Now, the St. Louis, they don't have that. And I think we're hearing from sources that season ticket sales are going to be down this year, including in St. Louis. But I think they know that if they show out for the Battlehawks, I mean, the NFL needs to take that location seriously. And it's a great sports town. Right. And really, they should have never left to begin with. I mean, they still play at the Dome. And so this is going to be an interesting year for the St. Louis Battlehawks because not only do they have their 5 home games, but because of the women's NCAA tournament played in St. Louis, the San Antonio Brahmas are going to play their home game in St. Louis. So they're going to have 6 home games. If St. Louis is good and wins the XFL conference, that would be a 7th game. And rumor has it that they're going to play the championship game again in St. Louis. So that would be 8 home games for St. Louis fans. If they show out for all 8 games, which is a lot to ask of them, they were kind of getting burnt out at the end. but they did show up for the championship game.
Right.
I mean, NFL franchises, NFL would need to look at St. Louis and be like, okay, they need to really be on the top of the list if we're going to add an expansion team. And that's why they are so passionate about the Battlehawks. Now, if the NFL came in and said, hey, St. Louis, we're putting a new franchise in there, I don't know what would happen with the Battlehawks after that.
Time will tell. Could there ever be a Trey Lance signing if he fails to land an NFL free agent job? Let's face reality. Trey was raw coming in. Didn't play a lot of games in college, I believe. Was it North Dakota State, I believe?
Uh-huh.
And he didn't play a lot of games, like 13. Was hurt in San Francisco. Didn't play many there. Went to Dallas. Hasn't had a lot of playing time. I think this would be an ideal league for Trey Lance, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, young guys coming in. I mean, really, you just need. I mean, think about all the guys that have made it to the back in the NFL. PJ Walker was with the XFL in 2020, and he finally is now not on an NFL franchise, but he's now up in Canada. And I think the reason why he's in Canada is the UFL didn't want him because he was getting older.
Okay.
Ben DiNucci played with the Seattle Sea Dragons in the XFL. He's
Okay.
still in the NFL. And you've got, Alex Magoo moved up. AJ McCarron went back to the NFL for a while as a backup quarterback and then came
Right.
with the there is and his name escapes me, he's still with the Jets. He was the Birmingham Stallions quarterback last year. He's with the Jets. So absolutely, if you can light it up in the UFL, like you're going to get a shot back in the NFL real quick.
I think Trey Lance could use it. He really could. I think he's one of those guys who remind me a little bit of Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen, everywhere he went, he'd get an opportunity for about a year or two to be able to see if he can play. And I think Trey Lance is similar to that. I don't know about attitude wise. I didn't know either of them well enough, but I'm talking about experiencing game reps. I've been covering this the pro football 45 years. And I'm going to tell you something here. I remember the old Michigan Panthers that played at the Pontiac Silverdome. Never saw a game at the Dome, but I saw them play at the old Tampa Stadium when they had Jim Stanley and they won the USFL championship. I remember that. I'm old enough to know this. 62 years old and better than me, old enough to know it. In fact, I covered a USFL championship game, I believe, in 1984, and the owner of that league, the New Jersey Generals, was a fellow by the name of Donald Trump. You ever heard of him?
Yeah, I think I know who that is.
I actually invited myself and a bunch of writers up to his room, and we were talking. It was pretty interesting. I didn't realize down the road he'd end up being president. And he had Herschel Walker, and I don't know if Herschel Walker's on the cabinet. I'm not turning this into a political show, so don't worry. I'm talking about the old Michigan Panthers, who actually put 60,000 fans in the Pontiac Silverdome many years ago for a playoff game. People in Detroit are great sports people. You have your allegiances. Mine is Michigan Panthers because of my time going back. We don't have a team in Florida, but again, I'm a Michigan Panthers guy anyways, and I'm glad that they're back. How important is it to have at least the Michigan Panthers? Because maybe what we'll do is talk a little bit about expansion as I go through some of the other things we're going to talk about. The Michigan Panthers, to me, at least represent some history.
Yeah, I mean, and the Stallions do, and they're all the USFL teams. It's just they're not drawing, and I don't know if it's a post-COVID thing. Really, I mean, aside from DC, who tailed off a little bit, St. Louis was on fire last year. San Antonio Brahmas don't draw as well as they did when they had a AAF San Antonio team. You thought that they would do well. All of these former USFL teams, drawing 60,000 and 50,000 and 40,000. I mean, they would be happy with 15,000 nowadays. So I don't know if it's, live sports or, trusting, these leagues come and go. And so people don't want to put their heart into it, which I totally understand. We've talked about at the beginning of the show how many different websites I started just to try to keep up with all the different changes. So it's important. There's supposedly one of the reasons why Michigan is still around because they don't draw very well is that a lot of these teams have potential owners sitting in the wings, and Michigan has potential. I've heard of several names about that's why there's a Michigan Panthers team. Remember, the USFL had a lot of teams. There's a lot of locations they could have chose. They chose Michigan. Again, it's a good market. And you think with the Detroit Lions kind of being exciting to watch. That maybe that would draw people to the Panthers. But again, a lot of the former USFL teams that are in the UFL are struggling to get that juice like they had in the 80s.
Yeah, but the major reason for that is you had private ownership, and a lot of those owners were willing to spend money and legitimately compete for the top tier talent in the NFL. This league is not considered one of those types of leagues where you're going to compete with the NFL. It's a complementary league, which they consider a feeder system, as I understand. So it's a different animal. I think I'm glad that Fox bought it and that they're able to keep entertainment during the off season and that players are getting the reps. Back then, when I covered the old USFL, there were bidding wars. You had Jim Kelly. I hated to see the gamblers go. I could go on the list of the Herschel Walker, Doug Flutie. The list goes on and on. And you had bigger names that they went there to see. Now you have guys where if you stayed 2 or 3 years, then you haven't been good enough to make it to the NFL. Whereas then you were getting paid some good money. Think about Jim Kelly, Steve Young. They started out in the old USFL. You don't have anything that bears this. I hate to see AJ McCarron, who was considered a marketable player, no longer there, but he certainly, I think, was definitely good for the league, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was surprised. Okay, if St. Louis didn't want him, why wouldn't Birmingham Stallions want him? That was the weird part.
So,
I mean, they would have been perfect in Alabama.
We'll talk about Jake Bates, and we're going to go to a quick station break. Jake Bates, in my opinion, because of his kicking, almost seemed like he put the league on the map with those long 60-yard field goals, and it didn't take him long to get a job going right across the building to land with the Detroit Lions. What are your thoughts about what Jake Bates meant to the 2024 UFL?
I mean, that was one of the top stories. I mean, because especially his background, where he didn't even kick a field goal in college. He was like the kickoff specialist, and comes in, gets an opportunity. You think about Brandon Aubrey, played with the USFL. Cavante Turpin played in the USFL. And these guys have all signed big time contracts. This is the kind of things that we need. We need to move outside, though, of the kicking and special teams and move into, wide receivers and running backs. And that's why this league needs time to kind of grow. Now we're having this kind of labor talk, and maybe there's a walkout or strike, which would be terrible for the league. Is the league going to make it past the season? They're talking about expansion. Everything seems to be on the right path. So we'll have to see that, and we'll get more stars coming out, this year.
I understand that the labor and risk, though, is attributed to the health benefits. Is that correct?
Health benefits and pay were the two big ones. But again, I was told that, to pay health benefits for these players year round, you're talking about, 10-week season, to pay them year round would cost the league like 1.6 or $2 million or something just for that alone. And they're cutting costs because they're trying to get this in line so that it can grow. They switched everybody from yearly employees to seasonal employees. The coaches took a pay cut. Like, everybody's taking a pay cut across the board. They're trying to kind of figure it out. It's one of those things where it's like, well, yeah, I mean, you're Redbird Capital, you're Fox, you have all this money. Why don't you just want to spend it? And so it's pay and it's yearly health insurance. The problem is what they're not, the league's viewpoint of it is that, like, hey, we're trying to add 2 new teams next year. Right. So if we're going to force us to give you a $10,000 raise per player, that is really, and we know that ticket sales are down. Right. What they do have going for them this year is Friday night on Fox. I think that's going to be a big draw. And I think if St. Louis does well this year, it will help them financially. But, so it's tough, but I understand the players too. But I mean, you're only working a couple months of the year, but then you got to train all season long, all off season. And if you got a regular job, you got to quit your job to go do that. So it's a tough spot right now.
So when we come back from the station break, Mark, what I want to do is talk about expansion, and then we have a few more other topics. Well, everybody know, as a reminder, all UFL News Hub can be seen on the front page of the South Florida Tribune. So go to www.southfloridatribune.com, and you'll get all the updated information from the United Football League, for which their season starts, I believe, beginning of that next weekend. Is that correct?
March 28th, Friday night.
There you
St.
go.
Louis against the Houston Roughnecks.
There you go. Next week. So Mark and I are ahead of this thing. Candy station break. Then we come back. Mark, we're going to talk expansion. Glad to have you on the Motor City Man Mouth Show. Scott Morgan, please be joined by Mark Perry. And I'm looking forward to bringing Mark Perry on a future edition of Inside the Pigskin. He's going to have one heck of a crew to ask him a lot of questions. So, guys out there, if you're watching tonight, get ready for Mark. He's going to do his best to promote the league. Candy station break. Then we come back to expansion.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. It talks about his 40-plus years in the industry and how media has changed over the course of those 40-plus years. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there's a link to our merchandise store as well as a plethora of great content. Go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football. Wednesday and Thursday nights, you never know what's on the docket, except Thursday nights, we do have a hockey show. But there's also Scott doing the Motor City Madmouth Show, which is his one-on-one interview show. You never know where it's going to lead. The other night we were talking UConn sports. Now we're talking UFL. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, you can call Scott 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest or you have show ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to you, Scott.
Thank you very much. Scott Morganroth, pleased to be joined by Mark Perry, the Motor City Madmouth. Let's go back to expansion. You talked about 2 next year. What 2 are you hearing about?
So for expansion, we've got definitely St. Louis. I'm sorry, Seattle.
Okay.
So that is, I've heard, Seattle, why Seattle is remember that I know stuff about Seattle. So let's just say that, there's agreements still in place from the XFL days. So that's why Seattle is in there. The second one that I've been hearing is Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, not Canton. I was in Canton, went to Canton, Ohio to see the USFL championship game. Love Canton, great restaurants in there. It was a fun place. We had a great time. But Canton can't hold, the market's not there. They're looking for upping and coming markets that are kind of trending up versus trending down. And Columbus, Ohio is a market, a great football area. And so that seems to be the other one. I mean, you hear maybe Salt Lake City,
right.
You hear maybe Lexington, Kentucky. I can tell you right now, there is no chance for a team in California. It's too expensive. There's no chance for a team in New York. It's too expensive.
Okay.
Philadelphia, that might be one. You could bring back the Philadelphia Stars. Pittsburgh, yeah, but I mean, I think Philadelphia would be better market. I would love to, I miss the Orlando Guardians. I mean, my wife and I are big Disney fans, and we're actually going to Disney in a couple weeks. So, and we went to an Orlando Guardians game in Orlando, and we had a lot of fun. That's Danny Garcia's, one of the co-owners of the UFL's background. I haven't heard any of those teams, but I think you can definitely Seattle is 100%, and it was a great market and great fan base, and I think that would really kind of juice the league. I've said this over and over again. Somebody said New Jersey. I think that would be another spot. Though I haven't heard New Jersey. It's been basically Columbus, Ohio, or Seattle are the 2 locations. But then they're talking about 2 more teams the year after that. So 2026, you'll get Seattle and say Columbus, Ohio. And then 2027, you would get another two new teams, which I think would be huge for the league. Could you imagine if they put a team in Mexico?
Oh gosh, wouldn't
I mean,
surprise me. They're experimenting with everything else on the planet. Why not do that?
yeah. And that's one of the Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson, when they owned the XFL, that was part of the thing, was the whole global expansion. What about putting a team in Toronto? A UFL team, and see what happens.
Right.
I mean, now the
That's
Toronto
great.
Argonauts are a great CFL team, but they don't draw like some of the other franchises in the CFL. But so I don't know what, but it's the biggest market, and they're another location that really wants an NFL franchise. So would Toronto fans come out like St. Louis
Yeah.
and want to show the NFL that they deserve a NFL franchise? And I think I also know this from inside sources that there are NFL people on phone calls all the time with when it's all the big people together, there is an NFL representative. So they are listening and they're putting their 2 cents in. They don't have a financial stake in the league, but they're certainly looking for, as far as rules stuff goes. And I think location, one of the things, and here's something that people don't realize, that we got to read the tea leaves. You're a media guy. You know how this works.
Right.
Roger Goodell last year at the Super Bowl was talking, somebody brought up international expansion, and he was very specific about it. And he went on to say that in order for an NFL expansion to work in Europe, you would need to put 4 franchises in Europe at the same time.
Right.
Where are you going to get those players from?
Right.
You're not going to go get them from all of these other teams. You're going to need the UFL. What if the UFL was going first to a location in Europe so that the NFL can see, is this viable? Hey, the UFL just put a team in London and it's crushing it. Just think what we could do if we put it, you know what I mean? So that's my conspiracy theory, because the NFL seems a lot more interested in the UFL than it did when Vince McMahon owned it.
Right.
There's a lot of connections between Fox Sports and Redbird Capital and the NFL. But the fact that there is an NFL representative on all those phone calls, they're not there just to listen, to be nice and friendly and give advice. They're there because they want something out of it too. Well,
the 2 markets that I surprised I didn't hear from you, although you mentioned they wouldn't bring a team in California, surprised that Oakland and San Diego wouldn't be considered, especially since I believe San Diego did not do that badly in the USFL, if I remember correctly. They lost a team that could play at the San Diego State Stadium. And Oakland, well, that's another story if they don't go there because of the Coliseum. But they're old NFL markets that would be hungry for pro football. And I'm surprised that they're not being considered, albeit one may have a bad stadium where the A's left and the Raiders did, but the other one kind of surprised me. At least one of those 2 would get one.
Yeah, I mean, the AAF had a San Diego Fleet, I think it was.
Well, maybe that's the one I was referring to.
Yeah.
You're the one telling me all these big leagues that nobody can keep track of.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that did well too. But I heard across the board, you would think that would be a home run. And they're like, nope.
Right.
Taxes there, the laws there. It's just the expense that you pay is just not worth it. You might as well go to San Diego. Another one I heard was Oklahoma City as a potential location too. So you got friendlier venues. But I don't buy that California thing, because they play and they practice in Arlington. So you don't have to worry. But there's all, the paperwork and lawyer piece makes it more complicated for California. And I've never heard them even thinking about checking a location out. Vegas would be another one too. They tried to get in Vegas.
Well, Vegas being considered for everything, so it really doesn't matter. I like what you said about Columbus, though. I really think you're right on with Columbus, and Toronto intrigues me. It really does. You don't have the NFL, granted, but what's wrong with spring football? Who you compete with, the Toronto Blue Jays?
I mean, you have the Argonauts, but they don't start until June.
Exactly. That's my point. You just made my point for me.
Yeah.
So there you go. Toronto would intrigue me. I've been to Toronto a bunch of times. They're good sports fans over there.
Yep.
And Columbus, I think it would be a natural. You're right. Canton thing didn't work out, but Columbus was ideal. You got the Blue Jackets, and that's it. Outside of Ohio State football, and they play in the fall. So why not be able to go out there and find a sufficient stadium? I don't know where they play, in Columbus. Although they have the soccer team, they could probably put them there too, don't they?
Yeah, but the problem is they don't like, the UFL has not liked, and even the XFL, as much as Audi Field is great for games, it really hurts them with the scheduling stuff. So a lot
Okay.
of times you can't play because of the MLS rules of the pitch. Uh,
Okay.
that the field, that they won't allow the NFL team to play that weekend. So it like really makes
Right.
things difficult for getting the schedule out.
Okay.
Even though they are the perfect, like DC is a fantastic venue. It's small enough. You're right on top of everything. Like every seat is really good. The energy is fantastic. If you've never been to a UFL game, I would recommend St. Louis and DC as your top two. Check out. And you want to go, you like beer, you sit in the beer snake section. You'll have a good time.
Okay, Neville says Chicago. Florida didn't seem to work out this time, but I think it could work in South Florida if you put them at FAU Stadium. I know that the Orlando thing didn't work out. Tampa, I don't know where you really put them there.
Tampa didn't work out, but
Yeah,
Orlando's they're redoing that stadium too, right?
right.
And
That's
adding,
true.
and so that could be a draw, maybe in 2027. Or again, Danny Garcia, her hometown is that Florida area, and I think if she has any kind of pull, she would want to add a franchise there. And Orlando is a good market. It didn't do great, but the Orlando Guardians only won one game, and they beat my DC Defenders, by the way. So if they got a good head coach, you get hey, if you bring in Tim Tebow as your head coach, I mean, you could sell some tickets.
Well, I always
If you would want it.
I always said that the Jacksonville Jaguars should have brought him in to play quarterback. And my good friend Dan Edwards, who was a PR guy, read that in one of my stories. He loved it. He thought it was great. I thought Tim Tebow was the biggest idiot because he should have gone to Jacksonville if he wanted to play quarterback. Instead, he was sold by Rex Ryan to play the old gimmick Wildcat. That'll be another conversation. Candy Evelyn suggests Chicago and getting more teams in the Midwest. I mean, all you have basically
Chicago,
is St. Louis and Michigan, but Chicago, I think, would be great. There's a lot of places that would be great. It'll just be interesting to see where they put the piece on the puzzle. And again, you alluded to Columbus, so there's another Midwest town there. You want to try to get a little bit more in Midwest, even though Seattle looks like it's your best representation on the West Coast. We can talk about expansion. When I bring out again, we'll do this and talk more about expansion. I wanted to touch base, but what I'm taking out of you right now is Seattle and Columbus look pretty good. Toronto looks intriguing, and Mexico will pop a lot of eyebrows. So with that said, let's talk about Daryl Johnson and Fox and what they meant to the league.
So when Oliver Luck came in to run the XFL for Vince McMahon, and I've met Oliver Luck a couple times. He would always say that he would never work for a conglomerate of owners when it comes to a football league because you need one person to make the call. And that was Vince McMahon. Now, in the end, they sued each other and he got 20 million and the he said, she said thing. So it didn't work out. Now you move in where it was Danny Garcia, The Rock, and Redbird Capital. Basically, Redbird Capital is like, we've got the checkbook. Danny and The Rock, you kind of drive the ship. And that worked out well. They spent too much money. Then the USFL come in. So now you have all these other, you've got Fox. So basically the board of directors of the UFL, from what I've heard, is Fox Sports, Redbird Capital, Danny, The Rock, even though he supposedly might not really be involved that much. And there are two people from Redbird Capital, somebody from ESPN, and Disney or something like that. And that's your kind of brain trust. Now, Fox, from the rumblings behind the scenes, is that they're the ones that are basically calling the shots and kind of doing everything. They look at the UFL as a television product,
right?
And which is fine. And the gameplay is good, and I like Moose Johnson a lot because he calls it like he sees it. He didn't like the kickoff of the XFL. The XFL kickoff went to the NFL, and then now he's like, all right, well, we'll bring it back. He was more of a purist. Fine. I mean, that's he's totally right in that, the handling of this labor situation, where he kind of said like, well, we're going to cut you, but I didn't really say we're going to cut you. Fox, one of the problems with Fox Sports and ESPN is that they're not able to tap into the Amazon money, the Netflix money, the Apple money. So here's this league that's trying to survive, and they're cutting corners. I mean, if Apple can give the MLS, a big contract, and now granted there's more games and more teams, but like, could you imagine UFL games on Netflix and how well that would do compared to like, and it's so funny to think about in 2020, you would be like, oh my gosh, they're on ESPN, they're on Fox Friday night, they're on ABC. You can't get any better than that.
Yeah.
5 years later, it's like, that's great, but I kind of would rather be on Netflix or Amazon Prime.
Right.
So that's the problem with them as the ownership group. And they have properties, ESPN and Fox Sports FS1, these talk shows, and they never talk about this league. It's always LeBron James and Aaron Rodgers fest. And, they never talk about the UFL.
Right.
So it's like you own these leagues and you never talk about them on your channels.
I agree. I think it stinks. Streaming, obviously, that's what we're doing tonight. Imagine if UFL got involved with streaming. It's a scary thought. Don't worry. I expect to bring you on. I'll do everything I can to promote the league, knowing that I love spring football. I've had history, covered one championship game. It's unbelievable. In fact, one of my great friends actually got his start as a PR guy for the Pittsburgh Maulers by the name of Bill Keenis. I don't know if you've ever heard the name, but Bill and I are really good friends. But yeah, he ended up being a PR guy, went on to be with Detroit Lions, been there forever. And he was actually voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame and honored there. So that's just supposed to show you that I don't care if you're a PR guy, whether you're a player, whatever, you're going to get your start here. And if you capitalize on it, there's a place for you to go. And it doesn't matter what position you play. Do you ever talk to Daryl Johnson at all?
I actually met him in person a couple times, and when I was like, "Oh, Mark Perry from UFL News Hub," he's like, "Oh," like he knew, the site and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I haven't reached out to try to get any guests on this year per se. I'm kind of in a holding mode too. I mean, here's somebody that I've covered these things for a long time, and I want to be all in, but I'm still like apprehensive because now you got this labor thing. Now they put in there, they have their own facility, their own building now in Arlington, Texas.
Right.
They're not renting anymore. That's their spot. And which is great. And that shows you that things are moving forward. They're already talking about expansion. That's great. But this labor thing really kind of throws things for a loop. Right. I'm hopeful that the glass is half full. We look back, they give the player the raises, they play the season. St. Louis balls out, and they're able to make a lot of money at St. Louis, which kind of was the catalyst to kind of save things, and then we're off to the races after that.
Called controlled growth, Mark. That's what they're doing.
And Moose said that in the beginning, that they were slow. They were slow growth, and they're really following the USFL model still.
Well, they are, and they're going to survive. I do believe it. My feeling with Moose, and I'm going to go ahead and release that interview to you probably next week when it comes out on our YouTube channel. And you'll have an opportunity to take what you feel you need of it. And hopefully, again, we'll continue to promote each other as we go on. You're already doing that with our website. We have the content there to begin with. So anybody that wants to look into it, by all means, go to our website. But it's called controlled growth. And one thing Moose told me was when I asked him about the head coaching process, he tries to line up head coaches based on the area that they're in, where it makes sense, which is exactly why he plugged in Wisenhunt over to Memphis, and that's how he makes a lot of his hires. So everything that you've told me, Mark, has been consistent with exactly what Moose is doing. And my 25, 30 minutes was great. He didn't shy away from anything I asked him, and you're going to find that out. And once I get that interview to you, I have a few more questions I want to get out to you, if I may, please.
Sure.
So let's talk about the players that you're looking forward to seeing this season. Excuse me.
I mean, I'm excited to see Abram Smith come back for the DC Defenders. He was their running back. He was the top pick in the XFL draft. He was hurt last year, so we didn't get to see him. He had some crazy monster games, and of course, DC Defenders didn't play well. I'm excited to see these new quarterbacks that we talked about at the beginning of the show. Kellen Mond, Manny Wilkins getting the opportunity, and in St. Louis, like how do they do it? Andy Isabella It's a wide receiver now that's playing with St. Louis. So St. Louis has got Hakeem Butler, Ja'Cour Pearson, Andy Isabella. They could light things up, but again, they lost Bruce Gradkowski, their offensive coordinator. How that's going to change things, and new guys, new stars that we don't know of, defensive players that come out of nowhere. The turnover has been kind of mixed. There's guys that I was excited about seeing that are no longer with the team. Some of them will wind up in the ELF. Some of them moved to Canadian Football League. But I'm also just looking for those next. Who is going to be that breakout star, that surprising team? And we'll know pretty early on if, like the Memphis Showboats are for real this season.
Well, I mean, who would have thought that the biggest drawing card you had was a kicker named Jake Bates going to the National Football League?
Yeah.
You can't make these stories up if you tried. You really can't. You have a kicker, and then he's kicking these things over at Ford Field inside the dome, and you know what then ends up happening? Dan Campbell doesn't have to go for it on every fourth down on the planet. He actually has a kicker that's good.
Yeah.
Scary thought, isn't it?
And the problem too is so ESPN owns your league. Jake Bates is your biggest story. Why was Jake Bates not on Pat McAfee's show all the time?
Right. The name that stands out to me when it comes to Jake Bates is a movie that many years ago I saw called Gus, about the kicking mule. Do you ever remember that one?
No.
You have to look it up. I know it might be a little bit before. It's about the kicking mule. They used to kick them from 80 to 100 yards away as their best kick. I think it was a great comedy. Just look at it.
Gotcha.
Take my word for this. And Jake Bates was kicking these things as far as he could, kicking game winners from 60 to 70 years. And I was hoping the Lions would get this guy. I hated to see Matt Prater go, but when you see Jake Bates kicking him this far, and the Lions won 15 games last year, and they had a reliable kicker that helped you win a few of them, it's a great story. And that's what, again, when I tell people about spring football, these are stories. And when you come up with great prospects that make NFL rosters, this is the intrigue.
Yeah. I mean, in his kicks, he could have went 70 yards.
Yeah,
they still had juice on them.
Well, so we talk about controlled growth, and we have domes. Of course, another dome was in Indianapolis. We'll get to that another day. But I'm sure a lot of people will be intrigued if something happened there. We don't know. We'll get into expansion. So the Birmingham Stallions dominance over 3 straight titles, 2 in the USFL, 1 in the NFL. Do you see that continuing?
Absolutely. I mean, Alex Magoo came back. They did lose their general manager, and you wonder. I mean, we see this in the NFL all the time, where you have a known entity, offensive coordinator leaves the team, and then all of a sudden the team just falls apart. So, or GM leaves. I mean, I'm Baltimore Ravens season ticket holder, and Ozzie Newsome is the king. You could talk about Ray Lewis, and you could talk about Ed Reed, and Joe Flacco, and all these other players, but there is no franchise without Ozzie Newsome. And now, Eric Acosta, I think, took over, but he was a disciple of Ozzie Newsome. Does losing the general manager of the Birmingham Stallions, a young guy, impact the franchise?
Right.
And that's the biggest storyline. But you got Alex Magoo, was your USFL MVP and champion. He's back. Now what are you going to do? You have the same guys as last year. You're going to win again. Unless I mean, the league it would be fantastic at the end of the season. It's Birmingham, St. Louis in the dome, both teams maybe have one loss or whatever, and just going at it, because there was that last year's UFL championship was a dud between Birmingham and San Antonio. San Antonio's quarterback was injured, and he tried to play, but and then they didn't bring him back. So
unbelievable. So my question is, aside from the Birmingham Stallions, tell me other teams to watch for in 2025.
I mean, you got, I would say, of course, America's team, DC Defenders, always. Then we got, of course, St. Louis Battlehawks. And I think the dark horse, I mean, the Brahmas too, they're an exciting team. But I think you got to watch out for the Showboats. Ken Wisenhunt. He's got quarterbacks. They got a good defensive coordinator. I think they could shock a lot of people. I think that the league is going to be more competitive than it was last year. And I think the only team that's going to kind of be a dud is going to be Houston.
All right. I need to know if you have any love for the Michigan Panthers or not. I have a lot of following in Michigan.
I like the Michigan Panthers. They surprised a lot of people last year. Mike Nolan's a good coach. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the mix too.
Okay.
I mean, they made it to the USFL Conference Championship game,
Right.
so they could do that again this year too. But they little change a quarterback, and you never know. A guy gets injured, something happens. I mean, look at the DC Defenders. I mean, they lose Abram Smith. I knew they were in trouble last year because all their wide receivers are playing the NFL. But now we've got all of our wide receivers have come back, and even new guys. So, I'm excited to see. But again, the labor thing goes. What if 75% of the players decide to play, and some of these top line guys from Michigan or Birmingham decide, you know what, I'm not going to play. This is not worth it. And then what happens? So
that's what you call too bad.
Yeah.
It's really, really too bad. One thing that entered my mind, you say they're playing on Friday nights.
Yes.
Of course, that's the nicest part about it during the spring. There's no way you can get away with Friday nights during the fall, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Fox, part of Fox's deal is that they want to have sports viewing every Friday night on Fox. So Friday night, college football, Friday night, college basketball, and then going into the UFL, and then I think Friday night baseball or whatever else they'll do until it comes around. So this is part. I mean, the WWE did really well on Friday nights on Fox, and that's where it's coming from.
WWE. So Steve Reichel, you're going to meet Mark Perry when the time comes. Two combat sports guys on Inside the Pigskin. I feel it. Well, my goal is to make it happen. Great to have you on, Mark. We've been talking about this for a few months. Now I'm looking forward to bringing you back on with some more football people so we can promote this league. I hope and pray, I'll keep my fingers crossed, that cooler heads prevail and common sense doesn't get out of control, that this league has a full season, because I know there's a lot of potential here. We've talked about a lot of areas for our first show tonight, which is great in terms of growth and potential of the league. I know we have. And that's why football, even as we talk about it here on March 19th, is very popular. I see from our audience is really impressive tonight. And I knew it would be because you're talking about football. And as I was promoting it on my platforms, I said, I'm talking football. I'm not talking Canadian Football League. I'm not talking the NFL. I'm talking United Football League. And guess what, people? It starts next week. We're talking about the NFL draft, but we're talking the United Football League where they really play and where you find players. Yep. And to tell you one thing, the NFL, darn well is rooting for you guys to do well, because think of all the times that you miss on the draft and you find guys that have got game reps and film that they're able to bring in. The NFL's rooting for you much harder than most people even think, because where are these guys going to go after college? And I'll tell you another thing as we get ready to wrap up the show. When I was growing up, or many years ago, you had the World League of American Football League, and I know people that actually worked in that league. So what Goodell's talking about is he's right. You need at least 4 teams out there to make it worthwhile, so the travel isn't so difficult, and then you bring a few out here. There's no way you can have a team like Jacksonville go out there, for example, and then have to bring him back. It'll never work. The only way it'll work is the way Roger Goodell's talking about it. And with all the international games that they're playing these days, Mark, you're already getting a taste of what it's all about.
Well, think about an NFL game. Like, what's the point of putting another team in San Diego or even St. Louis? Do you get more bang for your buck putting a franchise there, or do you have more bang for your buck putting a couple franchises in Europe?
True.
What's going to make your league bigger?
Yeah, but then again, you've already enticed me on Toronto and maybe Mexico.
Yeah?
Toronto, for sure. Why not?
I would get a lot of hate from those Canadian football fans, but
I don't care. It's in the spring. How can you get hate there? Spring. I don't know. The Argos, do they play March, April, May?
No, I don't know. And The Rock has a relationship with the owner of the Toronto Argonauts. So
Molson Corporation, probably, right? So
I forget the guy's name,
yeah,
but the Rock has hung out with him, and that's been the talk of the town sometimes. So you wonder.
and the Rock has relationships with a ton of people. The University of Miami graduate, they've
Yeah,
done well. Well, come on, Miami Hurricanes. You
yeah,
imagine they had a team in Toronto. I know it would do well, and I hope Florida gets another chance. I really do get another
me
chance.
too.
I understand the logic behind not going to California because it is expensive. But you've got me intrigued. Now I'm still going to have a hard time salivating about a Merit team with the DC Defenders. It's a little bit new to me. So if it takes me a little while to get used to it, Mark, please do not hold it against me.
I've
Please
been
don't.
saying it since 2020.
Okay. Well, I'm going to
America's
have to.
team,
Well,
DC.
I know I might alienate a few Cowboys fans, but they haven't been America's team lately. They seem to be drama kings. You don't believe me? Ask Stephen A. Smith. I'm not the
Yeah,
one who runs all those depressing facial looks that you have out there. But one thing
yeah.
about Texas, though, they do have a fair amount of teams, and I was just hoping that they would bring back the Houston Gamblers name to go back with tradition. But they, from what I hear, they had the choice of what name they wanted, and they settled on the one that they did.
Yeah, because that was selling better, and they already had a foothold in that location from the XFL days. So,
Right.
yeah, everybody thought they were going to just go with the Gamblers, and I don't think it really would have made a difference. I don't. It didn't help keeping the Roughnecks game, so you could have went with the Gamblers, and you would have been fine.
Now, it's been great having you on the show tonight, Mark. I know we've talked about it. Now I'm just
Sure.
glad we had it happen. And it just goes to show you about this show here and the numbers I'm getting and the feedback I'm getting in the chat room is there is a taste for spring football. And the
Excellent.
thing that I'm really thinking about when I think of Luis Perez and I think about King of Spring, my gosh, I'm thinking of all the things I've taken out of this show, the King of Spring. Does this guy even have a trademark for it?
I bet you he does. It's the title of his book. His book comes out, I think, on kickoff on the 28th. Luis Perez's book, King of Spring. That's the title of it. So I would assume he does.
Well, what can I say? I'm
Yeah.
going to be watching it, and I told Gerald Lewis Johnson, get me on their media distribution list, and realizing full well that at least I have the information coming from you. So
Mm.
they do it great. If they don't, I'm more than happy to go to my own website that we built from the ground up and
Mhm.
read it myself.
Yeah.
Because I might just go out there and throw some topics in from inside the picks in and plug away for your particular league and just throw them out there and see what these guys got to say until they get you anyways in a matter of a few weeks or so. Great
Yeah.
stuff. And look at Brian Pettis. I want spring football.
Yeah.
And
I'm
of course,
excited.
well,
I'm ready to
me
go.
too. Well, meanwhile, just let everybody know Sports Exchange follows us here. Candy Emily in for one more station break, and I want to thank Mark Perry for graciously giving us his time tonight. Been a great show tonight.
Anytime.
I really thoroughly enjoyed it, Mark. I'm so glad you came out. Candy, one more station break. Candy, I'm sure the troops are waiting for us, but just tell them we're going to be there shortly. We're having a whale of a time, Mark and I, talking about football on a March night here in the United States of America. Go ahead, Candy.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. It talks about his 40 plus years in the media industry and how it has evolved. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there's a link to our merchandise store as well as a plethora of great content. Go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Monday nights baseball, Tuesday nights football, Wednesday and Thursday nights you just never know, except Thursday nights we do talk hockey, and Scott does this Motor City Madmouth show. It's a one-on-one interview show, so check it out. If you want to advertise, call Scott 954-304-4941. If you want to be a guest or have show ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And if you see that red subscribe button in that lower right-hand corner, that means you haven't subscribed to us yet. Please do so and share us with all your friends and family. We want to thank everybody that's been in the chat room. Back to you, Scott.
You know, the one thing I'm glad that didn't happen, Mark, is when the CFL and the USFL at that time, or XFL, did not merge. I didn't think that the CFL, I didn't think that could work out. And the last guy that I had as a guest from a non-NFL show was a guy by the name of Danny McManus, a Hall of Famer.
Okay.
And remember, he came on here, and we had a whale of a time. I learned an awful lot of things about the Canadian Football League, the rules, and as much as I enjoy watching that wider field, I'll take our way better. And Mike Pereira has done a good job too, by the way, with the officiating as well in the replays. And I think a lot of people are able to learn from the replay system as we get ready to wrap it up.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that people really liked about, I would say one of the innovative things about the spring football UFL, all of these teams, is that behind the scenes, being able to see what's going on and them talking. So you don't have these controversies or, like the UFL is rigged or whatever. And that's been the main thing. The USFL tried to do drones and they were like, oh, we're going to have like more cameras. Like no one cares about that. But the referee thing, fans really like that.
Well, the UFL is very transparent. That's what they want to do. And that's what I think I like about it. You can call it right. You guys have careers on the line. They're trying to get back into the big leagues, as they say.
Yeah.
And that's why it's made it so fun. So again, this is the Motor City Man Mouse Show. Scott Morganoff, Motor City Man Mouse. Please join my Mark Perry. Thank you very much for being on us tonight, and I'm looking forward to bringing you back in a continued friendship. And we'll do everything we can to help you any way that we possibly can. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I have your cell phone, you have mine.
Yep.
But this has been an awesome night, Mark, and I can't thank you for the cooperation that you have, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person for sure. So
yeah, I appreciate it.
For this edition of the Motor City Man Mouse Show, Sports Exchange coming up next. Mark Perry, thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
God bless. And I will go up there, make sure you get the Daryl Johnson interview as soon as I can, so you can use it and do whatever you like with it. It's great stuff. Anything I can do to help you, great stuff. Thanks so much. Good night, everybody. We'll see you shortly on Sports Exchange.